Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started. First of all, thanks everybody for coming to our session. My name is Justin Chalfant. I'm the founder at PatchMyPC.
And I'm Adam Cook, and I'm a support engineer at PatchMyPC.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to be doing a demo of our product. So how many of you guys are using either Intune or Configuration Manager for your systems management? Cool. Okay, yeah, this will be a good session for you. If you're not using that, just to set expectations up front, our product does integrate with those two. So like if you're not using Intune or ConfigMan, you may not get a lot of value from this session. Okay, let's just jump right in. So as far as the session that we're going to do here, we're really going to go through a demo of our product, start to finish, show you how our software integrates in ConfigMan and Intune for the process of packaging applications, as well as updating third-party apps. So we'll show how how those integrations run, right? So if you're setting this up for the first time, if you go to docs.patchmypc.com, this is where we have our installer, as well as all our step-by-step guides. One thing to call out is we do also have an option where you can do a setup call. Do you want to kind of cover what that looks like, Adam?
Yeah, so setup call is something that I do every day. We get on a call with you, and we help set up our product in your environment. And that's just a nice thing that we offer free of charge, just to make sure that it happens first time and smoothly. So that's one-on-one time with an engineer.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, like let's say you wanted to do another live demo, like what we have here, maybe you have people from your team that couldn't make the conference. On our website, you can also schedule a live demo, and you can add additional people right from the invite here, and then you'll get on with an engineer from our team like Adam to get a demo. So first step, if you are using Config Manager, as far as the requirements go, our product would get installed on the top level software update point within your environment, which would be that WSUS server, and that's going to allow us to integrate into the WSUS APIs that you can use to publish third-party updates into the system that then flow into ConfigMan. So what we've done is we went ahead and installed our publisher tool, and this is about 5 megabytes, so it's a lightweight tool. This runs as a service. This is going to be where you can choose which third-party products that you want to either package or create updates for within ConfigMan, and it's also the same tool that we use in Intune, which we'll be kind of demoing what that looks like. So as far as the first step goes, we do have a full 30-day trial. So if this demo looks interesting, if you go to our website, you can go to request a trial, and that's going to give you full access to all products in our catalog and all features. And you can also get a setup or a demo like free of charge during that phase as well, even before you're a customer. Cool. So first thing that we're going to kind of jump into is if you're using the third-party updates feature within ConfigMan, you do need to have a code signing certificate. And what we've done is in ConfigMan 1806 current branch or newer, there's a built-in feature within the product where you can allow ConfigMan to create that cert for you and automatically deploy it to your client. So we're basically just tying off of the certificate that's already being managed through Configuration Manager, and that's going to allow your clients to trust the updates since they're non-Microsoft updates. So just to keep things simple, like we're using the built-in capability, and then when you install our tool, you should see that certificate automatically populate here.
But just to put emphasis there, if you're Intune only, the code signing certificate is not a requirement. This is purely for WSUS and the Windows Update agent.
Yeah. Now, as far as probably the first step that you'll be looking at is like which products do you actually want to start publishing into your update system, right? So we do have a supported products page, so I'll kind of cover that. Like even if before you go through and set up our product, if you just want to see kind of what we support today, you can come in here and you can kind of search our table, right? See all the Adobe products. Maybe you want to see if Java's here, so we could search Java. Maybe some of the adopt open JDKs, right? And you can kind of pull up, what's currently in there. Now, one thing that I will note is, let's say that there's a product that we don't have in the catalog today. Do you want to cover kind of what user voice looks like, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. So here is very similar to the Microsoft user voice, where you submit feature requests for the publisher, but also new applications that you want seen in our catalog. So we have like 550 plus products in our catalog, but maybe your business has software that you need or want and we don't yet have. And this is where we do that. Raise the idea, fill out the form. And this page that Justin's on now is actually our roadmap. This kind of gives you a bit of an insight onto how many products we are adding monthly to our catalog. On average, it's been 5 to 10. It's been pretty strong over the last couple of months. We're very committed to growing it. But on PatchMyPC.com/roadmap, you can see the new features and the new products we're adding to the catalog and product every month.
Yeah. Now, let's say that, we have a list that's 500, 600 or so products that we support today. Let's say that maybe you don't know what actually exists in your environment that you would want to publish. So before you even start enabling some products, we do have this feature where we can actually scan your existing ConfigMan database, and we can tell you, hey, what's already out there. So in this scan wizard tool that we have, I've just populated our Zoom, it's not cooperating today, but we've just populated our database server and then our database name for our ConfigMan database. And what we actually do is we'll look at the hardware inventory on your devices and tell you of the products that are in our catalog, how many already exist in your environment, right? So we could do something like sort by maybe the count. Let's say that we wanted to filter out any products that, it has to be on at least 10 or more machines. We could filter that out to say, hey, these are the machines that have, this product installed on at least 10 different devices, right? So this can be a good way, like maybe if you're trialing our product, just trying to show management maybe value of, hey, we have 100 apps that PatchMyPC could help us package and update. This scan tool can be quite helpful for that. We do also have an option. Do you want to look at the auto publishing, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that's really going to kind of cover all bases when you start using our software. So the idea here is that you can create a rule within this feature by automatically enabling products in our tool based on the number of devices that have that product installed in your environment. And that's going to cover you in scenarios where sometimes users just install software. They can, or maybe the help desk do it for them and they shouldn't. And the most common scenario is, because we're adding new products every month, this is going to help you kind of stop doing that routine comparison of saying, hey, what's new in PatchMyPC this month or quarter, and then going through and reselecting these new products. So this would, say we've got here the criteria of 15. What would happen is that when you run a sync of our tool, we'll run the same query, and anything where the device count is greater than 15, we'll just go ahead and automatically enable that product and publish it. So in theory, you could just set it and leave it alone.
Yeah. And I think that's one kind of thing to emphasize is once you choose the products and potential customizations you want to apply for different applications and updates, you really don't come back into our tool. Everything is completely automated. And then you can get like alerts via Microsoft Teams or emails like as new products are updated like day to day. But once we set this up, really you don't come back into our tool. It would either be through ConfigMan that you're deploying the updates or apps, or through Intune using the native functionality within that tool. But one thing that we'll look at is we're going to enable a couple products to show you how it works, but we'll look at some of the right-click customizations that we can apply. And we can do these customizations at different levels of our product tree. So for example, we could apply some settings at the all products level, things that are global, or we could apply them at specific product level or at the vendor level. So let's say that we wanted to go through all products, and let's say that we wanted to delete shortcuts for a product. We'll go ahead and choose delete here. So what that will do is, let's say that Google Chrome, when it installs, it puts a public desktop icon for all users. Let's say you didn't want that to happen, right? So in a single click at the all products level, we could have that turn off. Do you want to talk about the self-updates here, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our software in our catalog, a lot of the software in our catalog has the opportunity to update itself. Some people are happy to roll with that. Why not? It updates, it works. But other people like to operate in a controlled environment. So setting that option there, whether it's at the product level or globally, for any products that support it, will apply the application-specific settings so that the product itself doesn't update itself. So Google Chrome sets a few registry keys just to stop Google Chrome kind of wildly updating. It just depends on your kind of need to control application versions.
And on the client side, we'll look at this happening in real time. And within our log files, you can see the specific reg values that we're setting for you on these different features. Logging, cover that one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. This is a no-brainer to get set. In my opinion, it should be a default, really. So it will enable sort of verbose logging on the installers. And a key point here to make is that we are using the vendor's native media. So MSI, Google Chrome's MSI or the original EXE for some other software. We're not repackaging, and so the benefit here is really if the vendor's installer provides a verbose logging option, this is that, and it's the opportunity to choose on disk on the endpoint where those logs go. So these will really help you if the installation fails and you just need those log files to tell you what went wrong.
Yeah, so for example, if for those of you that do software packaging, probably have seen the 1603 error, generic error, right? That's not really all that helpful. But if you have a log file, you can actually see, hey, this is the part in the installation that actually failed, right? So enabling that can be quite helpful. Now, what we're going to do here as well is look at the product level. So I just enabled a software update for Google Chrome 64-bit. Now, once we get to the product level, we have 3 other customizations that are product specific. So we can do pre or post scripts. We could add a custom command line like a product key or license code or really any custom command that you may want for a specific product. Or if it's an MSI based product, you can just add a transform, directly browse out to it. Yeah, question?
In the scripts, can I use PowerShell?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do for Chrome, actually, we'll look at a post update script. So if I go ahead and click browse, these are the file types that we can add as a pre or post action within an app. So PowerShell, Batch, VB script, you can even add EXE or MSI as a pre or post action within this. So what we're going to do for this specific product is I've got a PowerShell script that we've pre-created. And what this is going to basically do is set the Google Chrome homepage just using a registry value, and it's going to set it to PatchMyPC.com. So just the basic PowerShell script, you can see the different values that we're setting. So anytime a Chrome update or application gets applied, we're going to make sure that's in a state that we want via post action here.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick point about additional files here as well. If your scripts need or want dependency on additional content like DLLs or maybe just config files, in that additional files or folders section there, you can bundle all that in. So ultimately it gets delivered locally to the client. All that extra content is local on the client at the time of install. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it could be like an INI settings file. Maybe you have a script that calls that INI file to put in like program files to configure it. Yeah, it could really be anything here.
There's a couple of points I want to make here real quick, Justin, if that's okay. Especially with the modified command line and the transformation file. Again, earlier I said that we are using the vendor's original media. So when you're looking to add custom command lines and MST files, just check out the vendor's docs. If you want to customize software, or if you currently package and customize software, you totally still can. And we are taking away the process from you of creating and looking for new versions, but you still have absolute control of applying your needs, your customizations.
Yeah, and if we were to right-click a product, or even at the all products level, we can see what we're doing by default if we click that show package info. So we can see things like what is the command line that we're appending by default. We can see the download URL. And if you click the digest, we'll also show you the virus total scan against the binary that we would be essentially packaging up for you. Yeah. All right, so next up, what we're going to do is go ahead and enable Notepad++ 64-bit. Question, yep.
Search for Bloomberg.
Blue.
I think I actually investigated that app about 3 months ago, and it is on our user voice. It's not in there right now. And
What's it called? Blue.
Bloom. Double O. Yeah. I put a note in the request Bloom about why we couldn't do it. Can you search it? OOM at the end there. That's the right spelling, isn't it? Yeah.
Boom.
Berg, B-E-R-G. I'm 90% sure altogether Bloomberg.
How do you spell it? Is that it?
Yeah, just append Berg. This is painful.
Yeah, we'll follow up with that one.
But
yeah,
quick point. If
here.
you didn't see it at the start, on our website, we have a list of supported products currently in our catalog. Check that out.
Yeah, and if it's not on the ideas page, just make a new idea for it.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, now Notepad. So what we're going to do here is, so Notepad specifically, if the application is open while the update's trying to apply, like the end user has the editor open, it will actually fail. So there's a feature where we can choose how do we want to handle apps that are currently open while an update's being applied, right? So you want to look at some of these options, Adam? Maybe you can talk to some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you just take the scenario Google Chrome, Chrome.exe is running on the user's device. The default option is that will perform the installation. The other option is force close with no warning. Skip the installation entirely if we detect the process is running, don't notify. The last bit is what we really want to talk about here, is provide a toast notification to the user. And that lights up all of this config, right? And then you can do things like set deferral policy, how many times you want the user to be able to snooze the installation, because it will appear as a toast notification. And the real, yes, this is a really good point. The real importance of this feature is that there is some software that absolutely must be closed before you run the install, because the software becomes corrupt if it's open while it's installing. And we document the ones that we know that have that behavior. There's not many. For the majority of cases, it updates perfectly fine if the user has Google Chrome.
Yeah.
Another scenario where you might want to actually do this beside corruption is to increase your patch success. You want to avoid pending reboots a lot of the time. You want to make sure you patch quickly. By closing open handles on files and processes, you kind of ensure that there's no pending reboot, there's no delay. So that's a nice feature. Another really nice feature, sorry, you're going to go from there.
Question?
How does the notify user look like? Can you show that?
Yeah, so
Can you customize it?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for this because we just added this feature like last week. So before it was no, but now it's a yes. So this is actually where the localization can happen of how you want that to look, right? So let's say that we wanted to say our org name was AppManagEvent, and oh shoot, here we go. So this is where you can add additional languages. So by default, everything used to be English, but we just added the ability to append to what the locale is running on the actual end user device. So we have the default wording. So we have our install. If you popped up for an uninstall, I could choose the default, and then during an update, I could add the default here, right? So this is kind of the default wording that we use by default. And then you could add multiple languages. So let's say that we wanted to add one for an additional language. You could go and customize it, and then you could use the different variables for your end user to show them how that would look. So for example, if I preview it, uh-oh, no default language. Let me try to save this. So this is what it would look like in the current English version, right? When it shows up on the end user's machine. And you could have whichever languages that you want in there for the end user.
A quick show of hands, how many people here support devices in multiple languages? Yeah, so this could really help you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I saw a hand at the back. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, question, will this also work from within Intune?
Yes.
Yeah,
So it
absolutely.
will work
All
in
of-
both Intune and ConfigMgr.
Pretty much
yeah.
everything we've shown you so far has feature parity of our Intune integration.
Because we know that, for example, PSL deploy script by default, it will not show up with those messages if you deploy them from Intune.
I don't understand the question, sorry.
PS app deploy doesn't work in Intune? Is that what you're saying?
They show you the pop-up message because the mechanism used in there will not work from Intune.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely work
You guys
in
have
both.
it working for Intune.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's different options we can do here, right? So let's say that they're in focus assist mode. We could choose to defer it on behalf of the user and not show that pop up, right? And you can control like how many times could the end user defer the update, right? So we would be able to track like and give your end users a specific number of times if you wanted to, and then force it at the end of that, right? You can also choose what processes do you.
On the end of this time, it forces the installation, or
So it depends. So when the timeout is expired, you have the ability to say close and update if it times out, if you choose this option, or you could choose to just keep deferring it if they don't address the message when that 5-minute timeout occurs. Yep. So it's configurable based on what you want to do. Yep. Cool. So that's Notepad. That's Chrome. Any ones that we're missing here before you look at the apps?
No.
Cool.
No, we're good. Yeah.
Awesome. So what I'll do is I'm going to just run a sync in the background just to get the updates going because they usually take a few minutes longer. So these two that we've enabled so far in the updates tab, these are going to correspond to the software updates in ConfigMgr, right? So, Zoom, it's still not working. So these will kind of sync in and flow into our software updates. Now what we're going to look at next is the ConfigMan Apps tab, which is going to allow us to actually package applications into ConfigMgr. So for the base installation, not just the patching of existing machines that have the app, right? So as far as the options go, maybe you could look at some of these core ones, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. So source folder, you have a directory today that you use for your app sources. Tell us where that is. SMS provider connection. So if where you have the publisher installed is remote to your site server, just tell us where your provider is. But some of the really key important ones here that I think are really worth discussing, I think personally, are this checkbox here, probably real quick, code sign. So it's just a quick shout out to say that in our ConfigMan apps, the detection method is PowerShell. And if your devices have an execution policy set to all signed, check that box, and we'll actually just use the same code signing certificate from the beginning in the general tab to sign those scripts. And when a new application update is available. So this is really good. So the default behavior, if you take the scenario where if we create the app now, Google Chrome 88, it's an old version, and you synchronize tomorrow or next week and it's 89 or 90, with this default option, we will rename that existing object in ConfigMan to be 89 or 90. We will update the content, we'll update the detection method, so it will persistently be the same object in ConfigMan. We will not delete it, tear it down, it will be the same, we'll just rename it. And the benefit there is that if you use that app in your task sequences, or if it had any deployments, those relationships will remain. So you will find that your devices, whenever you provision Windows in your task sequence, they'll be installing the latest version of whatever product you've chosen. Whereas the inverse of that, create a new app without modifying any previous applications, that is creating a whole new object, a whole new application for each time we create a new version. So then you have to manually redeploy, manually re-add it into your task sequence. That's just if you want that extra kind of care and control. Yeah, and retain real quick. So you can say how many previous versions of an app you want to keep. That's going to help you in rollback. If you want to roll back, because we populate the uninstall string in mostly all of our apps. And then lastly, content distribution. By default, we'll distribute to all DPs, but you can specify a DP group.
Yeah, and similar concepts here. So on the right clicks, we will have some additional options that are specific to ConfigMan apps that aren't relevant to update. So for example, some of them are the same, right? So let's say I want to delete shortcuts. Let's say that I want to enable logging during the base installation of the app. And let's say that I want to disable the updates, right? So they would apply for updates and applications, but there's also ones that are specific to apps. So let's say that maybe you wanted to set a specific security scope so that only certain admins could see applications created by PatchMyPC. You could set a specific scope within ConfigMgr to control who sees it. That's a right-click option that we could apply at the all products level. There's also a variety, like for example, categories. You know, this categories probably isn't one that you would set at all products. That would maybe be at an individual product level. Maybe you want 7-zip to have the file archiver category, for example, that would show up in Software Center. One thing that we did actually miss on the global options is you do have the ability where you can choose to put all of the apps in a specific folder. So for example, if I open my ConfigMan console, I can see that I have different folders for organization, right? So let's say that any app that gets created by PatchMyPC, we want to add it in the PatchMyPC folder to keep it organized by default. Now, once we get to the individual product level though, let's go enable 7-zip as an app. We'll do the 64-bit MSI. Let's say for this one, we just want to get a little bit more specific. So we wanted to override that global option and we wanted to put it in a subfolder called 7-zip. We could do that, right? We could come in here and we could do a custom category. So let's say that we want to give it a user category of file archivers, right? So this is in Software Center. You could sort by categories for your users and have custom categories if you wanted to, right? Any other right clicks that you think would be worth mentioning, Adam?
Oh, I guess the main point to make here really is that you will inherently see a different set of right-click options depending on which tab you're in because you're dealing with a different platform. So the updates tab revolves around WSUS, the config-man apps revolves around config-man/SCCM, and as we get onto the Intune tabs, you'll see again there's just different right-click options because we're working with Intune. You can do things like manage ESP profiles, for example, in Intune. There will still be the core ones like scripts and command lines and all that good stuff, and manage conflicting processes, but there are some platform-specific ones.
So in the alerts tab, this is going to be how you can get notified whenever things take place in your environment. So by default, if we look at the sync schedule, we're going to sync every night at 7 p.m. So let's say that there's a new version of Chrome that came out, or 7-zip, or any of the products that you enable. If we've released a update for that in our catalog on the back end, this is going to be how often you're checking and publishing either that new update or that new application to your environment. So from our perspective, we usually do about 4 to 5 updates per week, right? So third-party updates happen all the time. It's not quite like Patch Tuesday, where for the most part, it's usually once a month, right? So by default, our daily sync schedule is daily, right? But then in the alerts tab, this is where you can actually get notified. So for example, if we open up our Teams channel, because we added a Teams webhook, if you remember, we enabled Notepad++ as an update, and we enabled Google Chrome as an update. So just 4 minutes ago, that synchronization took place, and we can see that the update was published into ConfigMgr. So if I were to click here, I can see that we'll take you right out to the release notes. Maybe the CVE stuff, Adam, you can call some of this out.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a bunch of metadata we include. So we denote kind of like severity and classification. And if the vendor discloses any kind of CVE IDs that are a part of their update, we'll bundle that in the metadata. We'll include that within the alerts so that you or a security team can kind of be in the loop about the updates that you're kind of creating in your environment. Yeah, go for it.
Can you speed up an update based on the severity we saw? So if it's a critical update, you push it down. If it's a low severity update, then wait a month for it.
Yeah, so I guess the thing I'd want to say there is that you're totally still in control of the updates, deploying of the updates. So if you're syncing daily, those updates become available for you daily. And if you want to expedite the deadline of your deployment, totally go ahead. You still got full control over your deployments. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what you could do in that scenario is, let's say that you're using ADRs in ConfigMan for deploying updates. You could maybe have 2 ADRs, maybe one for normal updates, and then you could have one where the severity level is like critical or security-based classification, and you could have that deployed right away. So on the ConfigMan side, you could control exactly how you want to escalate and deploy quicker in the event that it had CVEs or it had a classification or a severity level. So that's kind of the 3 things that we would set on our side that you could key off of within the ADR criteria.
Yeah, that's a much better answer.
Yeah.
I think he answered it more than I did. Should we mention about the ADR stuff for Intune? Just mention it, amazing. Kind of said it now.
It's coming soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it similar engine. Sorry.
Notification in the team channel.
Yep.
It happens automatically, or
It does. Well, yeah. So within our lab, we had it kind of pre-set up. But what you would do is you would just create a webhook. So if you click the more info link on our guide, it will show you how you can go through your Teams channel and make an incoming webhook using the connectors. And then, once you enable that URL, you would be able to get it right away. So you just paste in the URL here of that webhook, and then you could choose whether you want all notifications or only success or error. And then every time something publishes, you will get notified in real time. Yeah. And what we should see now is I just ran a manual sync, and now we have our application created as well for 7-zip. So if I were to come back in and look at my updates and my apps, and one thing that I will call out is we do have this option to trigger a software update point sync whenever we've published a new update to WSUS. So what happens is when we detected, Chrome and Notepad was published, we automatically talked to ConfigMan and told it to start synchronizing so that we see the update in our console right away, and you don't have to wait for the next scheduled software update point sync. Now, one thing that you will notice is these are both deployed already, and that's because we had an ADR pre-configured in Configuration Manager. So this is where, for example, your question, how could I control security updates and deploy it quicker? That's where all the default functionality of ConfigMan comes into play. So for example, we're just using a generic show me all third-party updates from PatchMyPC, right? But let's say that you wanted to look at severity level, and you wanted to have anything that's marked as critical from us, which means it has a CVE. Now we only have Chrome. So you could have multiple ADRs, and you could have deadlines that are more aggressive based on that, for example. Deployment settings, same thing here. So you have all the same options. So we have a pilot broad, and production that are staggered out differently so we can get our phased rollouts, right? So same thing, collections you would use. Make use of existing collections, deadlines, maintenance windows, reboot behavior, everything would be using the native ConfigMan options, right? So when that ADR kicked off, it downloaded our content into a deployment package. So we'd make use of existing DPs, created our software update group for us, and it's already deployed to our clients. Now on the application side, if we look at 7-Zip, we can see we have 7-Zip in that custom folder that we defined. If I looked at the properties of this, we're going to automatically fill out metadata for you, things like the icons, descriptions, keywords. I can see that custom category file archivers that we added is automatically added there as well. Okay. Cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy that app to all users as available. Just going to use a PowerShell script to speed up that process so we don't have to go next. Anything else, Adam, we can think of on the server side before we jump to the client that I missed here?
Maybe just jump to the content path of 7-Zip, and I'll quickly talk about Script Runner real quick, because I think it's important just to point out its existence. So you'll see whenever you create an app or an update with custom options that in the source directory, you will see the vendor's sort of native media, like I mentioned earlier. And I just want to emphasize this is always the item that's going to get installed. But you'll see a bunch of PatchMyPC sort of accompanying content. And a lot of this content drives your customization. So what you'll see in the install string for a lot of our apps and updates is patchmypc-scriptrunner.exe is called. And that ingests just package.xml, and that kind of contains the instructions of your customization. So things like delete desktop shortcut, produce the toast notification to the user, and that's what drives the installation. And I'm pointing this out purely because maybe you have like endpoint security software that kind of has controlled sort of allowed binaries or processes. And you know, the script runner itself is signed with our code signing certificate from DigiCert. So as far as trust goes widely, it should be okay. But just wanted to call it out because it's useful to know.
For sure. So now we're on the client side. This is part of our pilot collection that had a deadline for 1 day from now, right? So since we allowed the deployment to be visible in Software Center, we're getting the ability to install it ahead of time. That's why we see it, but this could of course be totally silent if you wanted to. Now, one thing that I will call out, if we look at Google Chrome, if I open this up, just standard google.com as the homepage for all users. I can also see that I do have my public desktop icon. And if I look at details, I can see it's on the public desktop, not my user, right? So those customizations that we applied, let me go ahead and kick this off. But the customizations that we applied, we said, hey, delete the shortcut, create the log from that vendor, set the home page using a PowerShell script. So if I look at my CCM logs, which is the default folder, and we can see that we've automatically created PatchMyPC install logs based on that right-click option. And now we've got the actual verbose MSI log for Google Chrome here. So we'll be able to troubleshoot in the event something ever happened and it didn't work, you would actually have a log. Now, if we also look in the root of CCM logs, we have the PatchMyPC script runner log, which is kind of what Adam was talking about here. So this is where you can see customizations taking place, like the right-click options. So we're currently running Chrome's MSI, right? /QN, no reboot. We can see it just finished 34 seconds. And then these lines are where we can really see customizations happening. So deleting the public desktop shortcut, we would see that on the client log. Here's the 3 different reg values specific to updates, right?
Yeah, disable self-update. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we have that custom PowerShell script that we applied for the home page. So if I minimize this, I can see that shortcut's now gone. If I launch Chrome from my start menu, we'll see that the PowerShell script set the reg value that controls the policy for all users for the home page. So just an example, if you did have something very specific to your organization that we couldn't, obviously we couldn't configure that for all users, you can get very flexible and custom pre or post, actions. Now that's for Chrome. So now we're all up to date, just using ConfigMan software updates. Notepad++, so if I look, I've got this currently open, just a file open in the background. Let me go ahead and click install. Now we did enable that right click option for the pop-up. So what we'll see here is the pop-up occurring, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So a couple of options here. The user could either close an update from the pop-up itself, or if they were to close it from just the app, we would detect that and automatically start the installation. So if I look back at our script runner log, I can see there's the Notepad installation. It took a second. We can also see when we show the pop-up, we'll log out whether or not the user clicked close an update, whether or not they click snooze, how many attempts are still left. You would see that all in the same log file that you would see all the other actions taking place in. Cool, and that's Notepad. And then lastly, on the app side of things, so those two were the updates that we applied. If I look at our apps, we can see we have 7-zip showing up as available. So this is an app that we don't have today. So for example, Chrome, we went from version 71 to version 88, and then Notepad, we went from 7.91 to 7.92, right? Now, we can also see 7-zip isn't installed, so we can just kick that off. And this would be like any other application in ConfigMan as well. So for example, if we go look at the log files, you'll be able to see things like the app enforce log. We'll see this kick in a second, and it's going to make use of all the existing functionality that you would be accustomed to in ConfigManager. So app discovery, we'll see the detection method kicking off here. App enforce, we'll see the actual execution of the deployment type, how long it takes. And then of course, same thing for the script runner log. You'll see both the app installs and the updates happening here as well. So here's the MSI, where we can see all that taking place. Look back over here. I can also see that for both installation log for 7-zip for the MSI as well. Cool. Refresh, and now we have that installed. Any questions on, yep?
How does it work with Java? Yeah, the license model in Java has changed. You must now to pay for.
Yeah, good question. Do you want to look at that?
Yeah, absolutely. You take me back to the publisher. So yeah, there's actually a few software in our catalog that kind of is behind a paywall, right? That requires someone to have a sort of paid subscription where they then log in and then they are authenticated to access the EXE or the MSI. And this is why we have the local content repository setting in the advanced tab of the publisher. And you just need to define a path here in this tab. Here, and like Justin has, it's this directory here, and these are where we have the EX. It's great that you picked Java as an example because we have the binaries here ready. You just place the binaries in this directory, you enable Java in PatchMyPC, and then we would just look in this directory. And a nice little bit I'll follow up with on that is if a new version of Java became available, using the alerts mechanism, will ping you Teams or email saying, hey, there's a new version for Java, but we don't see the EXE for that particular version in the local content repository. Please go get it. So if you go to the more info for that page real quick, Justin, for the local content repository, I just want to quickly list out the other apps in our catalog that require a manual download effectively. And it's this table here. There's not many, I think it's like 10 or so now, this table here. So for one reason or another, we cannot automatically download those at the time of syncing PatchMyPC, and it's those apps there. So
yeah, and for example, I just enabled Java, but I deleted those files from our repo. So this is an example of what the alerts would look like in Teams. Let's say a new version of Java comes out tomorrow. Obviously, you wouldn't have that file in your repo unless, like, you know, maybe you are paying attention to Java every day. Yeah. We would alert you and say, hey, we couldn't create this new update for Java. You need to go download this specific Java file and put in your repo, and then the next sync will pick it up and publish for you. Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions before we look at the Intune?
The Intune is quite nice because it's very similar.
Yeah. Cool. So the Intune piece is pretty much the same concept. It's just different tabs. So in the Intune options, if we click test, this is where you would grant us permissions to your Intune tenant using an Azure app registration. So this is going to give us access just the min permissions that we would need in order to create and manage applications within your tenant, right? So Similar options, like do you want to delete, you know, how many revisions do you want to keep of an app? So we won't go too deep into that for time's sake. But the process is pretty much exactly the same. So for example, let's go to our Intune apps and let's enable 7-zip. Let's do the MSI version. And same thing here, right-click options, right? So let's say that you wanted to enable logging for the Intune side. The only difference is we would put this in program data, not CCM log, since it's Intune based, right? So we'll do that. We can also create assignments. So this can be done at the global level. So let's say that any app that you enabled, you wanted to make it available in company portal. Rather than going into Intune after we create all these apps, in a single click, we could say make all these apps available to all users within company portal. Okay. So that's 7-zip. I won't go super deep into right-click options because they're going to be very similar.
Can we just say manage ESP profiles? Just
Yeah,
that one.
that's a good one.
Yeah. So does anybody use Autopilot to provision devices today? A few? Okay, so real quick then. You can add an app into an enrollment status page profile so that whenever devices go through Autopilot, they get that app. And if there's a new version released of that app, at sync, we'll take out that old version, that old Win32 app, and put in the new one. So that, again, similar concept as earlier with task sequences. You'll be installing the latest version of Google Chrome whenever devices get provisioned with Autopilot.
Yep, same thing for Notepad for the update side. Let's say that we want to do the manage conflicting process, and we want to notify that user in the same way, right? So let's apply that. And I'll just make the update, we'll make that required to all devices. Now, one key thing to point on the updates, let's go ahead and get a sync running and have this created really quick. So just go ahead and run a sync, and we'll look at the log file while this is happening. But what we'll see going on here is we'll see us downloading the content from the vendors. There's, for example, the Java not found notification in our log. But now we're connecting into Intune using Microsoft Graph. So we'll see things like the apps getting created. So if I go back into Intune and look at my tenant, we'll see that we don't currently have any applications created. But here in a second, on the back end, we're gonna have our automation that's gonna create both the app and then the update for Notepad within Intune using Graph.
Yeah, so we'll expect to see the apps and updates both appearing as Win32 apps in Intune, in the apps blade.
Here's where we can see it getting added to the enrollment status page. So we can see that in the log file. Now we're creating the Notepad++ update. So if we look back in Intune now, we'll see that we have the 7-zip application already. We should see it's also assigned using that right-click option to our all users group. And we can see in the properties of this app, we've got things like our icons or keywords and all those details automatically added for you.
Which detection mode do you use in this case?
PowerShell as well. Detection method would be using a PowerShell script, which can also be code signed if you have a code signing cert. And you can configure for Intune specifically, you could choose the code signing cert that you want in the Intune option. So you can look at the personal certificate store, and you could choose a code signing cert there for your scripts if needed. Cool. Yeah,
Did you have the same availability to run pre and post
you do, yeah.
in Intune?
Yep. So if we, for example, let's go look at 7-zip. Let's say that you wanted to do a custom pre or post script. Pretty much all the right-click options would be the same that we said. There just might be a few additional ones, for example, like the ESP profile. That's specific to Intune, so we wouldn't see that in the ConfigMan updates or apps. But yeah, so pre or post scripts right here, you could add that in Intune the same way. The UI notifications for pop-ups would also work the same way in Intune as well. Categories, so if you right-click and look at categories, this would show the categories that exist in your Intune tenant as well. So for the most part, on most right-click options, there's like a one-to-one mapping between the different areas, with the exception of updates and WSUS. Some of the right-clicks don't really apply in that scenario, like the categories, for example. That wouldn't be applicable to updates in ConfigMan. Yeah, good question. Outside of that,
I guess one more thing,
reporting?
just really quickly, is the scan wizard. Don't have to go into it necessarily, but just highlighting that what we showed you earlier with the ConfigMan scanning feature of looking at the hardware inventory data in ConfigMan. The same is true here for our Intune integration. Again, we're querying the hardware inventory data that is in Intune, and the same is true with the auto-publishing rules. So we've spent a lot of time on the first couple of tabs, but only because there's feature parity. Everything we showed you at the beginning is also mostly true for Intune too.
Yeah. So we just got the 5-minute warning. Maybe a quick look at reports and then leave the rest of the time for Q&A. So from a reporting perspective, we do have some dashboards that we provide for Configuration Manager as well as Intune. So we have Power BI dashboards both for ConfigMan and Intune. And then we also have some SSRS dashboards that you can add for Configuration Manager. So we have a variety of different options just depending on which platforms that you're using. But you will be able to see things like your third-party patch compliance directly in here. So for example, I think this environment's a bit out of date, but you'll be able to see things like what's the compliance for a specific month, and then you can break in and see updates released that month and get pretty detailed on what your compliance looks like, right? But outside of that, I think let's leave the rest of the time for any questions to make sure that we can cover that. We've only got about 5 minutes left. So any other questions that you guys have? Yeah.
What if I download your demo and go absolutely crazy and set up a cool environment, and 30 days are over, what happens?
Nothing.
Still also
Yeah.
usable?
So the only thing that would happen in that case is you wouldn't get new apps, but you would still have everything that you had. So yeah, I mean, in theory, you could go build a lot of apps and then not buy, but yeah, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, hopefully, once you get to that point, we have once you start working with us, we have a pretty high conversion rate. So, but yeah, nothing would happen. You just wouldn't get anything new once that expiration happens. So if there's a new version of Chrome that came out, that would just say, hey, we can't publish it. But everything that you do during that phase will still be around. You'll still be able to have the apps and updates that you had throughout that period. Yeah.
Just to follow up there real quick, if you converted to a customer, again, you wouldn't have to do anything. We'll change your license key on the back end, and then it will just spring back into life. You don't have to reinstall. You don't have to re-enter a new key. Just picks up where it left off.
Yeah, I think it's cool software, and I want to experiment with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, setup call is a great way to start as well, where you can actually get on with an engineer, make sure things are good. It usually takes less than an hour. Literally the time of the demo is about the time it takes, with the exception of maybe you need to get a certificate created, right? So, yeah. Question?
Yeah, how do you license it?
So it's, good question. So it's per device. Let me pull up our licensing. So we do have all the pricing on the website. It's not, we don't hide that a lot of companies do. So you'll be able to see exactly what it looks like. So the top tier subscription, which is what we looked at today, that includes both the base application feature for ConfigMan and the update. So kind of the app creation and updates and the Intune functionality. This is per year, so it's $3.50 per device per year. Now we do have a starting price regardless of your device size. So for the top tier, it's $24.99 at least per year. And then the enterprise only, this would be just the updates feature for Configuration Manager. So for example, the top tier would include all 4 of these tabs basically. The $2 per device would just be the update. So you could update existing devices that already have the app, but you couldn't package the app, and you wouldn't get the Intune features. And then we have our Intune only kind of cloud, and that's $2.50 per device per year. So these are all per device per year for these different tiers.
And when you're thinking about device counts, how many devices to tell us? Just tell us the number of devices you intend to patch. So for instance, if you have 1,000 devices, but you don't intend to deliver software to them, 200 of the, then just tell us 800. Just license for 800. If you only intend to deliver software to 800 devices, just license for 800.
Yeah, and if you have Mac or Linux devices, you could exclude those in your count, for example. Yeah, so pretty flexible. Cool. Yeah. Other questions?
I guess if there wasn't any questions, I would definitely push for a demo, because the good thing about a demo is if you just click on schedule demo at the top there, it's just a chance to kind of look at the platform that you're using in more time and detail. So if you don't use Intune, don't plan to use Intune anytime soon, you just want to see more of what we showed you about ConfigMan, we can do that in a demo and kind of answer specific questions that maybe you don't want to share here about your environment. You know, demos and setup calls are definitely the way to go to get up quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't stopped by the booth as well, we're doing some raffles for some laptops. One of them will be on Twitter. It's just a QR code you can scan. Yeah, so we also have some swag there, some hats. Yeah, so stop by if you haven't. Yeah, stickers. Any other questions about anything that you? Cool. Yeah, I think that that probably takes us to time then. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming to the session, and hopefully it was valuable. Cool. Thanks.